Good morning. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. It's my pleasure to once again welcome Governor Rosselló to the great state of New York. We just had a very good meeting with the Congressional Delegation about the situation in Puerto Rico. Congressman Joe Crowley was there, Congressman Elliot Engel, Congressman Espaillat, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Congresswoman Nita Lowey, Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, Congressman Gregory Meeks, Congressman Jose Serrano, Congresswoman Nydia Velazquez, and we had representatives from Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand's office. I've spoken to both of them about this issue, and they are fully engaged. We also have with us the Comptroller Scott Stringer, Public Advocate Leticia James, State Senator Jose Serrano, no relation, and State Senator Gustavo Rivera. A couple of opening points. The situation in Puerto Rico is devastating, and the way it has been handled is an embarrassment for this nation. We have gone through emergencies before. We've gone through hurricanes. There is climate change, there's extreme weather, or Mother Nature is having a nervous breakdown, right? So we know what it's like to have extreme weather. The response to Puerto Rico has been the worst that I have experienced in my time in the federal government and in state government. When I was in the federal government, I did the emergency response for all the federal disasters. Not just in the United States, I did it in Honduras, I did it in Haiti, et cetera. So I understand what this nation can do in terms of response. And I know what they've done in Puerto Rico. And we are better than what we have done in Puerto Rico. It is really a shame. And it continues. It's not just a retrospective. It's not that there was an incident and our response was bad. The pain goes on. The pain exists today. There are a range of estimates, but an estimate as high as 60% of the people still don't have power. 70% of the people still have water that is unsafe to drink. This goes on now. I was recently on the island again. There's a sea of blue tarps. People are trying to get blue tarps. The blue tarps are where the roof of the house is supposed to be. And they're trying to find a tarp just to cover the contents. Forget the tarps. We should be building roofs by now. We should be rebuilding homes by now. This happened at the same time as Texas and Florida. And look at the difference in the response. Part of it is organic. You have states around Texas, states around Florida, and Puerto Rico is harder to get to. But it's also a level of concern. I believe that. I believe there has been a disregard for the people of Puerto Rico because it's Puerto Rico and because they're Puerto Ricans. I believe that. And it hurts me to say that. And this nation has to remember the people of Puerto Rico are citizens of the United States of America, and they should be treated that way. I am very proud of the way New Yorkers have responded from the get-go, the voluntarism, the donation all across the state. Was remarkable. People coming and bringing whatever they could. People bringing a couple of cans of soup because that's all they could afford. But every level of New York responded. We had doctors, we had nurses, we had medical supplies, we had people contributing food, time. We have done an extraordinary job, if I may say, in volunteering service for restoring the power grid. John McAvoy, Con Ed, who's here, all our utility companies sent people. We shipped 300 trucks down to Puerto Rico, utility trucks, pole trucks. We have about 500 workers now who are in Puerto Rico doing the utility work. You drive through San Juan, you see so many Con Ed trucks, you would think you're in Manhattan. My only fear is, God forbid, we have a snowstorm here or something and we have to get them back quickly. Then I'm going to blame Governor Rosselló. We have that agreement. Second compounding fact is not only does Puerto Rico need support to get the funds they need in this supplemental, a big part of what's going on now is Texas, Florida, Puerto Rico need funding to rebuild. That will be done in a supplemental piece of legislation. And Puerto Rico needs to get their fair share in that supplemental. They have an extraordinary assessment and rebuilding plan. It was done with the assistance of a lot of New York firms, Ford Foundation, Open Society, Deloitte, so it's a really smart plan. It comes out to $94 billion. They need that assistance. If they don't get the assistance, they just can't rebuild. It's that simple. The second complicating factor is Washington is also passing a tax bill at the same time. The tax bill is devastating to Puerto Rico, both the House and the Senate versions. Depending on which version it is, it could cost Puerto Rico 25, 30% of their current economy and job generations. Why, when Puerto Rico is struggling, why you would want to pass a tax bill that now makes a bad situation worse defies the imagination. When Puerto Rico is on the cusp, why would you pass a tax bill that makes their economic situation worse than it was? Worse than it was. If you were thinking, you would say, how do I pass an economic plan that actually stimulates the economy of Puerto Rico? That's not the question here. They are hurting the economy of Puerto Rico. How do you expect Puerto Rico, that just sustained the worst storm in its history, to now get attacked economically in the tax bill and to recover? Puerto Rico is at a fork in the road. We will look back at this time 10 years from now. And if we do it right, we'll build a new Puerto Rico. If we do it wrong, it will be years and years and years before Puerto Rico recovers. I believe that. I believe this is a moment in history. And this is the moment where Puerto Rico is going to transform, one way or the other. And what we have all said to Governor Rosselló is, it's unfortunate how you've been treated by this nation. We're proud as to how you've been treated by New Yorkers. It's sad that you've been treated as second-class citizens. And you have friends. And you have friends in New York. And you may not have a congressional delegation with votes of your own, but you do have a congressional delegation. It's called the Congressional Delegation of the State of New York, and each and every member pledges to fight for Puerto Rico. With that, we're going to hear from Governor Rosselló, then we're going to hear from Congresswoman Nita Lowey, then from Congressman Jose Serrano. But first, Governor Rosselló, welcome my friend, my brother, to the great state of New York, the state of your friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Wow, tough act to follow. Whoever put this order was not my friend, but just wanted to let you all know that today, this morning, I woke up to a loud sound. I didn't know what it was, but it was pretty significant. I heard sirens. Couple of minutes afterwards, I saw in the news that a tragedy in the form of a terrorist attack had once again happened in New York. Of course, immediately my thoughts went out to the people of New York. My thoughts went out to the governor and to everybody that has been working diligently for the safety of the people of New York. I thought that there was a big possibility that all of the meetings and everything that we had today was going to be put to the side. You know what? Once I stepped out of the hotel, people were walking. They were having their normal days. They were showing their resilience. And today, walking from my hotel to over here, I couldn't have felt prouder of being an American citizen, that after any attack that comes our way, we answer back by keeping working, showing the world what it means to be free, and making sure that things continuing happening. I am very proud of the governor of New York, Governor Cuomo. He has been a phenomenal friend to the people of Puerto Rico. And let me just reiterate, not only with words, but with actions. The governor communicated with the people of Puerto Rico before Hurricane Irma. Many people forget about Irma, but it also went through Puerto Rico. Immediately after the storm, first phone call I received after Irma was the governor of New York. How can we help? How can New Yorkers help? Immediately, once it was inevitable that Maria was going to hit Puerto Rico, first phone call I received, governor of New York, saying that he was there for us and that he would have his people on standby to respond as quickly as possible. First plane that arrived to Puerto Rico with aid was with the governor of New York and Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez and others in this delegation. And afterwards, the first collaborations from state troopers came from New York. The first help from the energy organizations came from New York. And the continuous support of the people of New York has been phenomenal. I would really like to thank the governor for his leadership. Would like to thank the delegation for their leadership and support. But more so than just saying that he has been a leader, Governor, you have been a champion for the people of Puerto Rico, and on behalf of our people, thank you so much. So today, aside from the attacks, we carry on. And we carry on with an important agenda for the people of Puerto Rico, for the U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico. Now, the governor has already stated what has happened and what's at stake. I just want to go over, we had a few slides over here, but I really just want to focus on two of them. I first want to let you know that this story has a beginning that is not only from Maria, but actually begun a couple of years ago. It began with the passing of the Promesa bill in Congress. In August 2016, Congress passed a bill that potentiated the creation of an oversight board and restructuring mechanism for Puerto Rico, but those weren't the critical components in that bill. The critical components were to make sure that Puerto Rico had fiscal sustainability towards the future and that we could have a path for economic growth. That was the reason why that bill was designed. That was the call that Congress was making at that juncture. Fast forward towards the future, there is a task force designed by that law that would make recommendations for Congress so that Puerto Rico could have instruments of economic growth. That report was submitted by the end of 2016. Our administration started January 2nd, and fulfilling our commitment, we started with a whole host of local reforms, all the way from economic reforms P3s, labor reforms, permits reforms, externalizing the promotion of Puerto Rico as a tourist destination, as an investment destination, and others, as well as very significant fiscal reforms so that we could reduce our budget by $1.4 billion. The budget was approved, a fiscal plan was approved, and it was approved with two major considerations. 2 points drive this fiscal plan, and I want to stress this to you. One, what is the macroeconomic basis for Puerto Rico and the outlook for the next 10 years, which plainly means how is the economy going to go? How is it going to grow? What is it going to look like? And secondly, what is going to be the revenue projection for Puerto Rico? So once we arrived at those numbers, then we could set what the measures at the local level were. Well, of course, after that happened, we got hit by not one, but two major Category 4, 5 hurricanes in Puerto Rico, which devastated our infrastructure, but also lacerated our capacity to get revenues and for economic growth in that time. Now, throughout all this process, we have been working on the recovery of Puerto Rico, getting out of the emergency. But now there is a critical rebuilding phase. And this is why we're here today. We're here because there are two things in the consideration of Congress right now that will define the initial conditions that will allow Puerto Rico either to prosper and to have a chance to be a beacon, a shining beacon of the Americas, or to fail significantly and to not have those resources. And of course, I am talking about a supplemental bill that will give Puerto Rico the adequate funding for us to rebuild. We're not asking more. We're not asking less than other states. We're asking the same treatment that Texas would have gotten, or that Florida would have gotten, or California, or the Virgin Islands. And then the second part is this tax reform, which in the current forms, both in the House and Senate version, do not include Puerto Rico, and it severely hampers one of our major economic industry in Puerto Rico. To give you a snapshot, what does it mean if we're not considered in this tax reform? It means that over 250,000 jobs, that represents about 25% of our workforce, are in danger of being lost, both industry and small and mid-sized businesses. It means that 49% of our GDP is in grave danger. It means that 63% of our revenues from companies, corporates, might be lost. And it means that 30% of our overall revenue could be severely hampered. If Puerto Rico is not considered, it is a significant blow to our capacity to prosper moving forward. As it stands right now, neither the bill in the House nor that one in the Senate considers Puerto Rico. And I just want to go over briefly. I talked to you about that task force that made recommendations. Let me tell you what were 3 recommendations that task force made way back when, before tax reform was being considered, in December 2016. First consideration, the task force believes that Puerto Rico is too often relegated to an afterthought in congressional deliberations over federal business tax reform legislation. The task force recommends that Congress make Puerto Rico an integral part to any future deliberations over tax legislation. Did that happen? That did not happen. Second recommendation, the task force recommends that Congress continue to be mindful of the fact that Puerto Rico and other territories are U.S. jurisdictions, home to U.S. citizens or nationals, and that jobs in Puerto Rico and other territories are American jobs. Why is this important? Because the objective, the so-called objective of this bill, is to bring more American jobs to the United States. Here, Congress is explicitly saying the jobs in Puerto Rico are American jobs. Yet the bill does not consider it as so. And lastly, the task force is open to the prospect of Congress providing U.S. companies that invest in Puerto Rico with the more competitive tax treatment, as long as appropriate guardrails are designed to ensure that companies are creating real economic activity and employment in the island. None of these things have been executed. And here is where I want to draw your attention to our petition. Our petition is for Congress to keep their promise. They had already established public policy by promesa that they would help, that will guide, and that will give Puerto Rico instruments to have economic growth and to have fiscal sustainability. So if that's the policy, the next question is, how do we achieve it? How do we achieve it? I can tell you how we don't achieve it. We don't achieve it by penalizing Puerto Rico with unfair taxes. We don't achieve it by giving it unfair treatment or unequal treatment. And the results of that happening, both in the supplemental and in the tax reform, would be less jobs, less revenues, a shrinking economy, and of course, insufficient funds to rebuild adequately for Puerto Rico. I can tell you how we can do it, and that is by getting fair treatment to the U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico. That is by not penalizing the U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico with unfair taxes or by giving us less resources. So the conclusion, in my view, it's clear. In this tax reform, if Congress wants to keep its promise, if it wants to be consistent with its own narrative that was laid under 2 years ago, then two things need to happen. Number one, we need complete elimination of the taxes that will be levied on foreign corporations outside of the United States. We need those completely eliminated from Puerto Rico so that we can sustain our base and grow stronger. And secondly, in our supplemental, we need to have fair treatment, equitable treatment, the same treatment that Texas or Florida would have gotten if they would have a disaster of this magnitude. We need to have that happen in Congress. I'm proud to say that after the meeting today, and even before so, I feel confident that we have a great delegation representing us. I am hopeful that all of the members of Congress would take a moment to reflect on what it means to have said something little under 2 years ago and then taking actions in the opposite direction. I would tell you that this, as the governor stated, is our opportunity to do what so many of us, so many of you here in the crowd today have longed for in the past, to have real transformative opportunity to make Puerto Rico into the jurisdiction that we all know it could be, a shining beacon that can progress. But the initial conditions matter. This next couple of weeks, these decisions will be taken. And if they are adverse to the people of Puerto Rico, we will not have the opportunity to prosper. But if they are aligned with the fairness that should be shown to all American citizens, then I am confident that with all of the help we've gotten from New York, from the different collaborators, with the report that we have developed, estimating the damages at $94 billion so that we can rebuild stronger, with the support that we're getting from non-for-profits, helping us be thought leaders in designing and bringing forth that more aggressive, novel version of Puerto Rico. I am sure that as the governor and the New York delegation stood here, I believe about a month and a half ago, remembering 5 years after Sandy, how big of a devastation it was, but how they used that as an opportunity to rebuild back stronger and better than before, I can firmly say that in 5 years, we will be standing together, either here or in Puerto Rico, it doesn't matter. But we'll be saying that the decisions that we're taking now were the initial conditions that allowed us to create the new Puerto Rico. The new Puerto Rico with a modern energy grid that's a model for the world. The new Puerto Rico that has smart housing, that can design infrastructure, that's at the vanguard, that can give resources to the people to rebuild stronger and better before, and that can be a place where all of the U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico are happy. I am saying that the power is in our hands to do this. I am asking you for your support to ask Congress to make sure that this opportunity doesn't go by, to make sure that they are mindful, as they said, that Puerto Rico is not relegated to a second plane, and that we can take affirmative action to support the growth of Puerto Rico. If we do so, I guarantee that we will have a stronger, much resilient, much better Puerto Rico. Thank you for all your help, and God bless.
Beautiful, sir. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you to our distinguished governor of Puerto Rico. Thank you to our extraordinary Governor Cuomo of New York, who was among the first not to just give fancy speeches, although he's very good at that, but he was outstanding in bringing supplies to Puerto Rico where it really made a difference. Thank you, Governor Cuomo. When I was elected, the top Dem on appropriations, I told my colleagues, first of all, thank you. And then I said, I believe that as appropriators, whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, we have work to do and work together. And that, frankly, has been the history of the Appropriations Committee. And I serve on that committee with Joe Serrano, who you'll hear from shortly. And he and I both work together to get things done for the people. I was invited to go to Puerto Rico with the Speaker, Speaker Ryan, several months ago. And you couldn't help but feel the pain, the lack of water. This is 2017, the lack of water, the lack of food, the lack of housing, the pain, the suffering, elderly sleeping on wet mattresses because the tarps couldn't get there on time. It couldn't be clearer. We saw thousands of people from FEMA, all the federal agencies, traveling Puerto Rico, taking notes, talking to people. It is now 2 months later. I want to make it clear that the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. And as appropriator, for the last few months, we have done nothing. Nothing. October 1 was the beginning of the fiscal year. Do you know what that means? For people who understand the way Washington works, it means you have to pass a budget. You have to pass the 12 appropriations bill. We haven't even gotten together with the Republicans because they refuse to meet it. Guess why? They're busy doing the tax bill. Not going to help people in Puerto Rico. Not going to help the people in my district. Not going to allow us to continue to deduct state and local taxes. This is a bill for the top end that is not going to help the average person who lives here in New York and certainly our citizens in Puerto Rico. It is an embarrassment. And after some of us came back from Puerto Rico, we looked at the governor's plan, we evaluated it, we presented it to our committees who have the responsibility to fund it. And what did the president say? He said, oh, there's so much to be done that can wait till next year. In my book, when I'm with a young child and they fall and they're bleeding, they don't say, sit in a chair, we'll wait till next month. You take care of it now. And there's bleeding and suffering, there's illness, there's death in Puerto Rico. And we have to take care of it now. I want to turn the microphone over to the most distinguished representative from Puerto Rico. I'm turning it over to you. Because Nydia Velasquez and Joe Serrano have been extraordinary representatives, whether it's in our caucus, whether it's in the floor of the House, whether it's meetings with Republican, Democrats. No people have been more eloquent. So I want to turn this over to you. My friend Nydia Velasquez, who has been extraordinary. Let me get out of here.
Thank you so much, Nita, but I told the governor that I wanted you to speak to the people here because she is the appropriator and she's the top leader, the top Democratic leader, and has done an incredible job. And we need to leave to go and take a flight to go and do the people's work. Finally, we hope, we are hopeful. Governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, sorry. Andrew, you've been incredible. You've been incredible, being the leader that the Puerto Rican community, our fellow citizens in Puerto Rico, have been climbing for in terms of the role of the federal government. When natural disaster strikes, we don't ask questions. The federal government must be there to provide the resources to help people's life whole again. We have failed the people of Puerto Rico, and I truly believe that there are some in Washington, particularly one person, that hasn't realized yet that the people from the Virgin Islands and the people from Puerto Rico are American citizens. So when you give a directive to Alexis and say, Google or let me know who is the president of Puerto Rico and the president of the Virgin Islands, it says Donald Trump. I hope that he goes through that exercise. But look, for the last few years, the reality in Washington has been that as Democrat has provided the votes to keep the federal government running and open. And we're going to be there because we know that they don't have the votes to pass any bill, much less the budget and the appropriations. So we will provide the votes to keep the government open, but Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands must be included in that bill. Thank you so very much, Governor.
Thank you. I'm not Nydia Velasquez. Governor and Governor Rosselló and Cuomo, we share something in common, so I'm going to take a second here. Your father was governor. Your father was governor. My son is a senator. There he is. This is also something that I want to do very much so, and that is that we skipped over my leader, the president of the borough, which technically is the capital of Puerto Rico, Governor. The Bronx, New York, Ruben Diaz Jr. New Yorkers on the Appropriations Committee. Nita Lowy is the ranking member. I'm a member. Grace Meng is a member. We will continue to do what we have to do, which is to push, to be nudges, to just drive it in, to say you cannot and we will not support any supplemental that doesn't treat Puerto Rico fairly. You know, I had a very undistinguished military career. I was a private, then I moved up to the equivalent of a corporal. I went to Alaska. Where else would they send Puerto Ricans? You know, and I didn't sacrifice like so many of my buddies did. But when they accepted me and put on my uniform, they didn't ask me where I was born. They didn't tell me that my citizenship was different than other people. They took me and had my number come up to go into the battlefield. I would have been there, and they wouldn't have asked any further questions. Mr. President, Republican Congress, Republican Senate, if not for all the needy people in Puerto Rico who are going through this moment of pain, then for the veterans of Puerto Rico who have given so much to this country and want nothing more than equality now as they try to rebuild. We need to make sure that there is no more games played. I remember when we were doing the appropriations on the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare as I like to call it, and they said, I said, what about the territories? They said, well, we don't have any money left. I said, we made a decision to write the bill and then figure out how to pay for it. There's not a set amount. So why is it that when it comes to Puerto Rico, it's second? Except, as Nydia always reminds us, when it comes to war, we may be first. We need to be treated equally. Our role will be that. The governors will do what they have to do. And Governor Cuomo, New York has always been there for Puerto Rico. Ever since I came here at the age of 8 years old, nearly 8, to this day, I know that New York has always been close to Puerto Rico, and it's never shown it more than during this time. If some other folks in this country would follow your lead, we would be where we should be. And Governor Rosselló, 37, ¿verdad?
8 ya.
And Governor Rosselló, first of all, congratulations on your baby, Pedro Javier, who is how old now?
2 weeks.
2 weeks old. And Pedro Javier, and little did he know at the age of 38 that he was going to take over an island, get a board imposed over him, and then 2 hurricanes. But look, he's still strong, and he's going to lead us in this fight jointly with our governor. We're going to win. We're going to win for the Puerto Rican people. We're going to win for ourselves. We're going to win for what's right in America. So don't lose hope. And I know there are cameras here. I'll very briefly say this. To the people in Puerto Rico, al pueblo puertorriqueño, I know that my words can resolve your pain. Mis palabras no le quitan su dolor. But know that you are not alone. No están solos. Nosotros, que nunca hemos dejado de ser puertorriqueños, siempre estaremos con ustedes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me just say to the governor, the Puerto Rico and the Puerto Ricans are part of the New York family, and we are there every step of the way for you. I don't want the governor to think that the maltreatment by this federal government is because they're Puerto Ricans. It may be discrimination against Puerto Ricans, but this is a federal government that has turned its back on the poor and the middle class all across the board, Governor.
Yeah.
So they're doing it in the state of New York. This tax plan that they passed, 60% goes to the top 1% in the nation. And everyone else gets the crumbs that trickle down. So we're dealing with it ourselves. It's not just Puerto Rico. And you're right, we are strong and we are tough. The governor alluded to a terrorist attack that we had this morning, and it was a terrorist attack. Another terrorist attack, unfortunately. It was a person who was living in New York City who wanted to make a statement, strapped a bomb, pipe bomb to himself, where he got the technology by downloading it from the internet, which is a real problem. where you now have this hate and this vileness with accompanying technology that anybody can download on a laptop computer. And he detonated the bomb. It went off. It injured him, injured several others. We believe and hope minor injuries on several others. But it was a terrorist incident. It was an act of hate to make a statement against New York and who we are and what we represent, and to make a statement against freedom and democracy. We are accustomed to that. It does make us stronger. It does make us tougher. But it also makes us more compassionate governor and more loving governor. And when you are part of the New York family, you are never on your own. And Governor, you and the people of Puerto Rico are part of the New York family. Thank you and God bless you.